can you compare and contrast the challenges between early and late stage research from a cross-company collaboration perspective and the potential value that a real-time integration platform might bring to an early stage development?
So this is another one. I'm sure there are people in the audience who are with the life sciences and the pharmaceutical industry. The number one business priority that's being identified is time to market.
Absolutely.
Right. So the amount of time, post-discovery or even post-BLA to go to a commercial state, the step in the middle is PD, the process development or the product development phase. And then you are looking at, almost everyone's looking at part of time to market acceleration is, one is, can we make PD itself more efficient, take less time in doing PD, but the more critical part is the scale up and tech transfer, right? Now, scale up and tech transfer, obviously there are certain documentation requirements, et cetera, but that system, we also hear, it's very high need, but that system is also broken. Couple of key reasons. So first is, the personas and the language and the vernacular. So the PD scientist is probably talking about the same thing, but describing it differently than it's going to be described when it goes into operations and manufacture, right? So they're describing the CPPs and the CQAs and the QTPP, they're describing it in those terms. They use very different data systems, data structures, right? Ranging from manual recordings to Excel spreadsheet recordings. The second part is the type of equipment that's used at that lab scale of development doesn't have the data readiness and the connectivity that you find in systems when you're into operations and manufacturing. Like you have systems where all that the system is going to give you is at the end of a run or a design of experiment, it's going to give you a batch file that you're reading, right? So that problem also, I think, can be solved with as we go into these modern data ecosystems. Like I think I heard in one of the talks about using knowledge graphs, for example, and aliasing to describe, so what was described about, let's say, a dissolved oxygen level during inoculation, during process characterization in PD, with an alias can be linked to how the dissolved oxygen sensor will measure it during operations. That through aliasing, we can transfer not the data, but the knowledge, which helps with the tech transfer part. I think PD, in a way, is both challenging, but it's also an opportunity. If I look at it from an AI and machine learning point of view or applying these analytics, in operations, it's natural for a legacy brownfield facility, which is a validated environment, for you to try new technology and new analytics. The hesitance is there because you'll have to go through a validation process. If you look at PD, PD naturally is meant to be a process of experimentation because you're trying to find the design space and the control space. So at that point, if you start using machine learning and these type of algorithms, not only will you make PD more efficient, but now you did that algorithmically so that at least for a new product or new process, when you go into manufacturing and production, you have a higher level of confidence and adoption goes up. And if you look at regulators like FDA, the Emerging Technologies Task Force, for a new substance or a new method of manufacture, they are actually encouraging and supportive in giving you accelerated approvals, in fact, if you use new methods of manufacture or you're using technologies like AI.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I think it was very helpful. Do we have any questions with regard to CMOs or CDMO integration and how that's emerging?
I kind of want to repeat the same question which I just asked. If you use AI in PD, you're still selecting the relevant signals or variables important yourself, or you're using AI for that?
So can I answer the question with a question first?
Sure.
Okay. So if you don't use AI, what do you do in PD? When you're characterizing a process, when you do your design of experiments, what do you do?
You are taking each variable, experimenting, see the results, and basically then you combine. You're doing the same thing, but
you're doing the same thing,
yes.
right? So let's say you're doing a design of experiment to have a certain, so let's say if it's for a downstream, let's say filtration process, right?
Okay.
That you're doing, you're characterizing. So you're looking at, you're doing a design of experiment to see the output purity, right? And you obviously start with your first set of data, you have a starting point, right? And then you see the impact on purity and you make some changes to certain parameters,
Yeah.
right? So you will use exactly the same parameters and the same number of parameters because particularly at PD stage, you're required to look at a broader design space, right? So I would personally say you would start out with all parameters.
Okay.
But typically, what you do is you end up accelerating it. You do a first stage of what is called unsupervised learning, okay? Where what it's going to do is that step will tell you which parameters had the highest weight and influence on impurity or the purity that you were trying to, right? Then you use those high significance features then to run an optimization algorithm, right? So that's how you go through a two-step process. So
Okay.
to answer your question, do you select personally? So there is human in the loop,
Yes.
right? But, and that's the key. You have to look at it as it's not replacing the human. It's not replacing the PD practitioner. It's augmenting the PD practitioner, right? That's one. That's why it would, that time to market, compressing the PD time, right, with augmentation. Secondly, you end up doing, when you do it with machine learning, you end up doing a lot of that in silico. So instead of running 10 wet experiments, you might get to the same stage with 5 wet experiments. So if each experiment costs you $200,000, that's $1 million saved in your DOE and the time from a time to market point of view. So you should be looking at it, it's augmenting the PD practitioner, it's not replacing the PD practitioner. And then more importantly, when you pass on that for tech transfer, you're doing an evidence-based tech transfer because it got captured in data, right?
So just one follow-up question then. How, I guess now I'm thinking, how do you explain regulatory body that these are the weights that, I don't know, this is a new way of thinking from my brain, so I'm sorry. No. But I'm thinking if you are not deciding, doing all these experiments yourself and you are just kind of going faster, how do you prove that this is the right weightage, but we have not seen it? Like, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm just...
No.
It's very new.
So that's also another myth, right? So that's also another myth because when you, right now also in PD, you are using statistical methods, right? So the answer to that question also is that you will have evidence because you are still running wet experiments, you are running fewer. So for example, if you were going to run 4 wet experiments and you changed, let's say, the dissolved oxygen level in the one experiment, you will take a bigger leap in the first one. But you're still going to, at the end of the day, when you make your submission to the regulator, you're doing it based on the evidence. You just got to that point of the right number sooner, right?